guys, in this video, I wanted to do something a little bit different, and I wanted to show you some parts that go into what it really takes to make a kid be like a gamer in a game, like you see with my son, where he's homering twice in a single game off of like an upper 80s mile an hour arm. And so I wanted to give you a framework for how we actually go and train this stuff, and I think that I hope that this might be helpful. So there's a lot of components that go into this, and what we're trying to do here is we are trying to show you how to build gamers, okay? So what it takes to build a gamer are, I think, 3 different types of things. And so one of those things that we really want to be able to do is we need to be able to find a way to maximize the exit velos. Maximize the exit velos. We need to be able to increase our hard hit percentage. What are the percentage of balls that we hit hard? And can we show that kid how to be adjustable to different speeds and timings, so he can hit the fast guy, he can hit the slow guy, right? So that's what we need to do. And so if we actually want to be able to do that, I think there's 3 things that we need to be able to train. The first is we need to be able to train kids how to be elite movers. I'm going to talk about what this means in a second. We have to be able to move elitely, or like it's just not going to work. The other one that we need to be able to do is we need to teach them how to have an aggressive approach. How can they learn to time up their aggressiveness and have a good approach? And then, do they have good barrel direction? And if we can get all 3 of those things dialed, we have a gamer. And there's some details that go into it, and I'm definitely going to go over them. But before I do, here's what happens when you don't get these things right. So if you do not have a kid who is a good elite mover and does not know how to have an aggressive approach, I should actually write aggressive. And you need aggressive because they have to think they're the most dominant person on that field. If you don't have either of those, what you end up having is a kid who has confidence issues. So a lot of you guys are constantly, well, that's not how you spell confidence, but there you go, confidence issues. And a lot of you guys are telling me, he just lacks a confidence. Well, it's a combination of doesn't move well enough to like trust himself to make contact, and he doesn't have an aggressive approach because those 2 things are not online. So when you don't have these 2, you end up having confidence issues. If you do not, if you are not an elite mover and you have barrel direction issues, what will often happen is you will tend to have a ton of swing and miss. You just will not be able to square up the balls effectively. And if you do not have an aggressive approach and you don't have good barrel direction, you tend to be perpetually late. And so these are the 3 common problems that often people come to me with that their kids are definitely struggling with. So how do we go about actually fixing these things? Okay, so what happens is we have a framework for how we approach doing each of these things. And I'm going to go over what each of those are here with you today and dive in. I'll hop on my computer and kind of walk you through these in more detail so you get some good examples. But there are 9 pieces to the outside of this that help us train this so that it turns into a system that creates that gamer that we're after. And for me, the whole thing starts with like, what kind of mechanics are we trying to chase here? Because there's lots of different beliefs in how to hit, and I think that this is the one that makes the most sense, and that is to do what little boppers do. Little boppers are guys that are under 6 feet tall in the bigs, that are still hitting 25 or 30 home runs a year in their prime of their careers, and they're doing something different. So let me kind of walk you through what those guys are doing. And so here's an example of what little boppers are really good at doing. So little boppers, like a 5'9" Mookie Betts right here, he has to do things much more efficiently if he's going to compete as a 5'9" player than a 6'7" Aaron Judge necessarily has to do, who can rely on strength and size and muscle. And what these guys all tend to do very, very well, all these little guys, there's about 15 common swing traits, is they are really good at loading and unloading their body along the fascial lines of the body. So this is a map of a fascial line. It's the fascial sling that runs across up the legs and across the hip into the other rib cage. And they are really, really good at stretching these tissues before they flex them. And so that's what Mookie Betts is doing right here. See how his hands are going up and back while his front foot's getting into the ground?
he is loading the fascial line that runs across his torso. This is a good shot of Freddie Freeman. A good example of, you don't have to be a little guy to use little guy stuff. Freddie Freeman's not a little guy, but he's showing you what a good example of this is, where you can really see his core stretching as it goes from his hip to his rib cage. And so they're very good at stretching and flexing all the points, and they run across their knees, their hips, their torso, their shoulders, their elbows. They're just really good at maximizing that system of their body and training that system of their body so they can get the absolute maximum out of every pound that they have.
So you have to be able to move like a little bopper moves. However, the problem is most kids can't actually move the way that little boppers move. And trying to tell a kid how to move that way is like trying to explain what chocolate ice cream tastes like to a kid who's never had chocolate ice cream. You could tell someone that it's cold and that it's sweet, and you can be super right. Like, yes, chocolate ice cream is cold and sweet, but like it doesn't convey the meaning of what, or the experience of what chocolate ice cream really is, right? And so I think there's a reason that this happens, and it has everything to do with, let me see, get over here. How do I want to write this? Stability. Stability. So the body cannot do the moves that we're asking it to do if it does not have the stability to actually move in that way. And it turns out there's some details to this. So let me hop over to my computer. Let me kind of walk you through that piece.
This is something that got turned on to me by a professional major league pitcher who I was paying $100 an hour to take my son to get pitching lessons from. And this is an image taken from an article that's over on PubMed, where what it says is there are 7 different categories of movement that your kid needs to have good motor control in, or they're like gonna really struggle athletically. And so what this pitching coach told me was, I can't take your money anymore. Your son is at the age of 10. Your son just simply doesn't have enough coordination in some of these movement patterns to be able to do the moves that I'm asking him to do. I would spend your money on doing motor control training, not pitching lessons. And so that's what I did. So to give you an example of what that looks like, this is an example of a kid who is not doing one of the motor patterns. This one is called core bracing. And I can't express to you how much this isn't about strength. Like, it's about the ability to control the move while he's moving. So when he's engaging his upper body, he can't brace his core. So this is super important, because when we look at like a Freddie Freeman, do you see how his back is straight? It's not arching. Well, this kid doesn't have the ability, when he's violently trying to use his upper body, to brace his core. So what his body will do is it will not swing from he cannot make contact if his body doesn't find a stable position first. So his body will first seek stability before he tries to hit the ball. And so what happens is it ends up looking like a swing like this. So this is a gal who actually lacks pelvic control. She lacks core stability, probably got some scapular stability issues as well. And so her body arches her back to find some stability, and then she swings, because that's the only way that she can control her swing. So the problem is most people try to cue their kids to not have these mechanics, but you can't cue a kid to do this stuff. People try, but it doesn't work. You have to fix the underlying motor control issues first. So you really want to have your kid tested for these things to make sure that they are fixed. And what happens when you do this is my son 6 months after, he's 11 here. This is his first home run he ever hit out of a Little League field. It's a 200-foot fence with a USA bat, not a U-trip. He wasn't cheating. He ends up becoming really, really coordinated, and he ends up getting to high school, continuing to master these motor control issues. And this is his first high school varsity home run, and I like to share it because almost never ever do kids hit their first home run out to the opposite field gap. Like, I'm sure it's happened. It definitely has happened, but it's very, very rare. But it happened because we focused on motor control patterns first and not mechanics first, and it made a huge difference.
So after we actually know what mechanics we're trying to go after, where we're trying to do what little boppers do, we have the ability and the stability to do those movements because we have enough motor control to do them. Then it's like, okay, how do we teach these kids how to load and unload their body along those fascial lines, right? And so for all of us, not for all of us, the way that we do that for us is pattern primers. So let me walk you through what those are.
And so here's why we love pattern primers so much. Pattern primers are a way to help somebody feel what it's like to do a move. And they're specifically, what we've done is we've designed them to help a kid feel what it's like to load and unload their fascial lines. This is one about loading. This is just about the fascia around the hip, on how to load it, and it gives them a certain feeling. Then we have ones that are about unloading the fascia. So this is one that shows how to unload the pelvis wrong, and this is one that shows how to unload it right. And they're a bunch of weird exercises. And then what we'll do, and this is an example of my daughter, because this stuff works just as good for softball players as baseball, is we don't treat the swing as one whole swing. We want to look at all of the things that little boppers are doing that you are not doing, and then we will identify, okay, your lead leg doesn't do this, your pelvis doesn't do this, your back leg doesn't do this, your front shoulder doesn't do this, and we'll build you a workout. And what a lot of people don't know is that you can measure essentially how well your fascia moves by how well you swing the bat with something called rotational acceleration. So the higher scores that you get with rotational acceleration, the higher or better of a job you're doing of using your fascia. So bat speed is good too, but fascia is like a closer metric of how well you're doing it, because you will accelerate faster. So we'll put kids into drills that are the same thing. So we'll give them, if they don't load their hip well, we'll give them a drill that helps them feel what it's like to load the hip. Then we'll put them in a hip loading drill. We'll measure it with a sensor, and it'll be like, oh, if you feel that feeling that you just felt on the wall, does it make the bat sensor number go up? And it turns out that it does. And when you do that for every single part of the body, it's crazy the results you get. This is an example when my daughter was 12. She's swinging the bat 53.7 miles an hour. 8 weeks later, she's swinging the bat 60 miles an hour by doing this process. And as a 5-foot-tall, 12-year player, she goes down. This is taken 1 week after that she went on this type of a program, and she ends up hitting her first home run out to the opposite field. And I share that because every mile an hour you add to how fast you can swing the bat, add 6 or 7 feet to how far the ball will go. So this ball literally goes about 40 feet further than she was capable of doing 6 weeks earlier, all because she got put on a program that helped her target this stuff. And look at how tall she is. She's basically the smallest girl on this team. So this stuff absolutely works when you combine, like, okay, we know what mechanics we're trying to do. We are fixing motor control issues so you can actually do the moves we want you to do. And now let's show you how to feel them and measure them with a bat sensor so that it can all come together.
So when we dial in those 3 things and we teach kids how to actually learn how to be elite movers and maximize their bodies, we can really get some kids that are on the right path, and they've checked this box of what it is to, like, they move well enough that they can do the rest of this piece. And so the better that you can move, it kind of sets your ceiling, like how good of a player can you be. But in order to like actually realize that, we got to have the barrel direction piece. Okay, so let me talk about what that is. So this was something that was made very apparent to me, and we took a lot away from a Coastal Carolina hitting camp that I'll show you some footage of here in a second. But being able to have 3 different swing directions. So can you go oppo, middle, and pull? Tons of people are only focused on oppo, or they only stay up the middle of the field, they neglect pull. We have to be able to move our barrel in all 3 of those directions. So like, let me show you, hop over to my computer and show you how we do that.
I think this is super important. I know I shared this clip a little bit earlier, but my son's first high school varsity home run was actually an opposite field homer. And it's because we did some very, very specific things with how to develop opposite field power. Like you see us doing here on opposite field days, where we're going to go into a HitTrax environment and we're going to ask him to hit opposite field home runs, and he can do it at will. No, that's not a home run. That's only a double to the opposite gap. But you can see he's trying to go opposite field home runs, not just focusing on pull side. And it takes a very specific sort of like a training of the torso needs to happen. How you train your hips to decelerate faster is an important piece. Very important stuff. The other cool thing is when we take dead pull hitters and we put them on our opposite field directional series. This is an example of an 18U kid I was coaching. They start hitting their first home runs out. It's 325 down the line to right, and this kid, dead red pull hitter normally, ends up hitting his first home run ever to the opposite field, and it was with a laser. So this is the kind of stuff that happens when you put kids on. My daughter home run, I already showed you my daughter's first home run against the opposite field, but that's the kind of stuff that happens. You end up having way higher batting average when you can go oppo, and you don't neglect it, because we want to make sure that we can go to pull side too. This is my son. He can absolutely pull one to go that direction too. There's no doubt. So these are the kinds of things that you need to be able to do. You got to be able to train the power to be both ways if you want to be truly feared.
The second piece here is being able to maximize on plane percentage. What percentage of your swing is allowing your barrel to stay on the same incoming path of the pitch as early as possible, or get into the same plane of the pitch as early as possible, and then stay on that same plane as long as possible. Do you have a training process that helps you do that? Let me kind of go over what that entails over my computer.
So how to actually train this skill was something that I really took a lot away from when I went to a Coastal Carolina camp and took my son on that camp. Being on plane is one of their main core principles, which is probably why they have won a College World Series, and they were in the one last year. And this is my son on one of their drill progressions where they're trying to help you do this thing. And I don't know if you've ever hit off of one of these things, but this is called a perfect tee. And there's a whole progression that goes with this. This is just the first drill of the progression. But what happens is if you do not get your barrel on plane deep, as close to the catcher as possible, your bat ends up smoking this tee. And so they had this whole series of progressions about how to get your barrel on the same plane with the pitch as deep as possible, and then keep it on plane for as long as possible. That when we ran him through, and if you can actually measure this stuff, it was, you increased your margin for error. And so he then goes on. This is Coastal Carolina Stadium. He's in the middle turtle here. He hits 5 home runs out. That one was off the L screen. But he goes on to hit 5 home runs after he'd gone through this progression. He'd never done that in his life. That's not something he would do. He actually left the whole stadium, put one in the parking lot out to right field over the whole boardwalk. And he was just done as a freshman in high school. He's in his freshman summer, so maybe you're technically a sophomore. But that's the kind of thing that happens when you increase your margin for error. We had already built up his power from all the other concepts we talk about, but now when you put his barrel on plane for a longer percentage of time, now all of a sudden he doesn't have to be as precise, and he starts murdering balls. So this needs to absolutely be a part of your training. It's definitely one of the drill series that we put kids in.
And then the last one, and this one is not talked about enough, is connection. So let me show you what connection is.
So connection is something that can be measured with a bat sensor. All of the workouts we recommend are done on bat sensors, but what it does is it measures the angle of your bat compared to your spine. And so the red line is, in these graphics, is representing the spine, and the green is obviously the bat. And you want to have a 90-degree relationship. The best hitters have 90-degree relationships between their bat and their spine a higher percentage of the time. And the closer you are to that, the more it helps you make consistent contact. And so with my son, we were having some issues. So let me show you a map of his miss hits. So he's a lefty hitter. So he was either launching balls out here, or he had a ton of rollovers to the pull side. And what happens is when your connection numbers are off, when he was pulling the ball, I should say, is his connection numbers were off. And so what we like to do is we want to make sure that we identify what types of mishits you are having with your hitter, where are those happening, and then we need to measure different sorts of things like connection to see if there's certain issues with the way your bat's moving that are causing these types of mishits.
So now once we have those two things, we are an elite mover who knows how to move really well and explosively, and we know how to do those moves in lots of different directions while staying on plane as long as possible. Now we have to take it to the top, and we got to transfer this to the game, because now we've got an athlete who can do some damage, but what do we have to do up here to train them to be able to produce in a game? And one of the most undertrained ways that this never happens is they don't pay attention to what we call the 10 timing models. And the 10 timing models are different ways that different hitters hit. Different people have different ways of creating rhythm. Some people, when they listen to music, they tap their foot. Some people, they listen to music, they bang their head, right? They need to feel different things. And too many coaches tell kids to not do movements, and it robs them of rhythm, which is a huge part of being able to time up your aggression. So let me show you what I mean by that.
So here's some of the timing models that are just super important to understand that you need to be able to do. One is the no stride. That's something that so here are the 10 different timing models that we recommend people So here are 10 timing models that we recommend people try. One is the no stride, typically best used for guys that are really big. We have the toe dipper. So this is where you stand back, you dip your toe in the water. It's kind of like a hybrid of no stride, but Shohei Ohtani uses this one. It maximizes control if you don't have a lot of stability. We have the float foot forward like Seager. We have leg kicks like Josh Donaldson. This is one that is really, really, really been an unlock for my kids. You have toe taps like Chipper Jones, and each of these comes with its own way. How do you time these up that you need to kind of understand? You have guys that start really vertically and they need to fall and compress their bodies like Euclid. You've got drop steps, so you actually see that Nolan Arenado's stepping backwards as he does this. You've got a bat tipper, where he really wants to feel the barrel of his bat by tipping it. Really a method that's coached out of most hitters, but can be a huge timing mechanism. You got the classic Griffey rocker, where he's feeling rhythm in his hips before he goes. And then we just got the turn and burn. So these are like dead pull guys who hit totally dead pull in really closed off stances, where they're actually, even when they go oppo, they're basically pulling the ball. So they've optimized for all of these things, and most people make the mistake of teaching their kids one of these and telling them not to do most of these moves. And if these aren't part of what you're experimenting with, like, I just don't know. You have no way of knowing if you've left a major unlock on the table.
So once we have the right type of style that unlocks the best rhythm for you, then we need to make sure that that style is on time. And for us, this is all about stride timing.
And my favorite example of this is this graphic. Look at how early this guy picks up his foot and where the ball is in this pitcher's hand when he's at his peak leg lift. He is already ready to go way before the ball is released. And this is my biggest pet peeve when, specifically in the softball community, they really like to teach no movement, no rhythm. They're not fans of my 10 timing models. They're not my models, right? Big leaguers have invented these. But basically what happens is they say, oh, we don't have enough time to do those things. That is true if you are doing them when the ball is in the air, but that's not what elite hitters do. They do these moves before the ball leaves the hand, and so it gives them a hybrid way to have the rhythm of a timing model with a bat tip or whatever, with the how to time the stride of it. Now, here's an example of my son doing this wrong, okay? So this is him. He's got a leg kick, and what we like to look for is he's going to be late on this. He gets jammed on a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. And what we do is if you stop the video when his leg is at his peak leg lift and you look at where the ball is already out of the pitcher's hand. That is not what this guy is doing. And so we had to learn and teach him how to actually load his body out better. If you go look, this is him 6 months later after working on this. Look at where his knee gets to at the peak of his leg lift here. This guy topped 90 miles an hour on this day. There's his peak leg lift. You can see the ball is way closer into the pitcher's hand, and he ends up ripping this through the 4-hole for a single. But learning how to time when you stride is super, super important. And you need to know how to do it off of fast guys like this, but also the slow. And you need to know how to do it so that you're adjustable. But this is a key concept we have to make as part of our training.
And then once we have the right timing style, we know how to time that thing up to a actual pitcher, whether they're fast, average, or slow. Then we have to talk about the different hats that your hitter needs to be able to put on their head, whether there's 2 strikes, whether this is a thumber, whether this is a velo guy, and like which ways help them get right for hard throwers, slow throwers, and all those in between.
So here's an example of 3 different types of hats that you should spend some time training, and there's a couple others as well. Number one's a hack. This is, you got a fastball, you're sitting a speed, you're sitting a location, and you are sending it as hard as you can, right? That's an A-hack. People talk about that one all the time. But as an example, a lot of people will know a pitcher faces a fastball and a changeup, and they'll be upset that they missed the changeup on an A-swing hack. And it's like, man, I am happiest when my son is sitting a fastball, first pitch, and he gets a changeup, and he swings through it for a swing and miss. I want that A swing because we're optimizing for 1 pitch and 1 speed, and we want a swing and a miss. If we don't get that, that's that location and that speed, because then we still have 2 more strikes to give, and we still got a lot to happen, right? B swings. B swings are all about deepening up the contact points. This is an image of contact point chart taken from home plate. Imagine that the hitter's front foot is landing even with home plate. We want to deepen up the contact so he's making contact at the front edge of home plate, and he's looking to hit the ball out oppo. So we actually, our 2-strike approach that I teach, because we're so good at teaching guys to go oppo, is to actually try to hit an opposite field cage bomb, or not a cage bomb, but we want to try to go off the opposite field foul pole. This deepens up our contact point. It ends up having him make a lot of contact right deep down here, and he's able to still do damage to the opposite field. Several home runs this year with 2 strikes because we just deepened up the contact point. We didn't choke up and just try to put it in place. That's an example of a B swing. Where's this one? Let's talk about a C swing. A C swing is a swing that's like, okay, we need to be able to adjust mid swing. And so there's two different moves that you need to know how to do in a C swing. Do you see how Alvarez sinks into his front knee right here? He's sinking into his front knee while his hands stay back. This is a swing that's not his A swing because he's early, but his eyes recognize something, and he's getting off a different kind of a swing. He's still trying to do damage, but he actually saw the spin early and can react. So you're working on swings where you see the spin early, versus a B swing is a swing like that's a swing that you don't see the spin well because you know like maybe a guy has a good changeup and you need to know how to like just foul this off. So this is an example. My son fouling off a pitch with his B swing. I think it's like a 10 pitch at bat. Where he fouls off a lot of pitches, when you're looking to deepen up that contact point and take balls or just foul things off by waiting a long time and you're not worried about it and you're going until you get a mistake. The other thing, if you're going back to the C swings, is look at this clip. This is a great clip. So these are two swings that are timed up on each other. The one on the left is a fastball, and they're both timed up at pitch release. And the one on the right, is that true? Yeah, the one on the right is a curveball. Do you see how he bends into his front leg more? Kind of another angle from the Alvarez angle where he really bends in more and that buys time. There's an example of my daughter doing this where she is actually flexing into her front leg. She sees changeup, she sinks, and then hits. And then this is the other move where it's not necessarily always about sinking further. You can actually stride longer. So Miguel Cabrera is known well for this, where the stride lengths are different. Fastballs are shorter. You're riding out a hip, and you can actually ride the hip out longer if you want to hit an off-speed pitch, and you have the ability to do that. And so that's something that we train, something I'm pretty proud of. I think this is a Southern Miss commit. Yeah, this is a Southern Miss commit. This is my son's first high school varsity hit ever, and he used this approach. He fouled off two of this guy's pitches. Now, to be fair, this is a Southern Miss commit when the guy was a sophomore. It wasn't like he was his senior self, or it's not like he's at college, but still a high-level high school guy. My son's a freshman for his first high school varsity at bat. Took that approach of deepening up the contact point with a lot of B hacks to try to win with two strikes, almost hit a double down the left field line, and then gets a hanging breaker and goes to a C swing where he adjusts, rides out the back hip, and bangs a hard slider to the right center gap for a single. And so this is the kind of stuff that you do. And like, is this part of your training? How many hacks do you train? What about if you're a girl? Do you have your rise ball hack? Do you have your drop ball hack? These are things that we absolutely have to be training.
So now that you see the whole structure for how we actually try to build someone who is a gamer, let me ask you another question. I want you to imagine that we have oh, did I lose my black pen? I want you to imagine we have a street light, and I want you to imagine that it's got three lights, right? We have a red light, we have our yellow light, which is it's a very yellow light. Maybe I need to mix in some orange in that. You kind of get the point though, right? Maybe orange is better. And then we have our green light. This is our go. And so what I want you to do is mentally think to yourself, like when we help evaluate a parent on what is going on with their hitting, what we will see is like, where are your red lights here? Like, which one of these things are you not doing? So we can definitely, let me just kind of give you an example here. Like maybe a parent is they'll do a normal approach and a two-strike approach, but they're going to leave out a lot of other hats. So let's say we'll give them a yellow there. They've never ever talked about how to have the adjustability of the timing to different hard pitchers like we talked about. They've never done 10 timing models. They've just thought there was one way to hit. And so we have, on our way of teaching an aggressive approach, like we've got two reds and a yellow here. A lot of people will make sure that they do, one of these pieces. So like they might do a lot of how to hit the ball oppo and mid. Maybe they won't do a pole. Let's say this guy does all this. Maybe they do a little bit of on-plane training, but they've never even looked at measuring what connection is with their hitter. So like that's red, right? Then we come over here, like, have you actually tried to look at how the fascia moves so that your hitters have little bopper stability? Maybe some people have, maybe some people haven't. We can give that one a yellow or an orange. And so you have to answer these questions all for yourself. And I want to talk to you about what this means later on for like how well your hitter develops. But the goal that you need to be asking yourself here is how many of these am I doing, right? And then when it comes to stability, like it's almost always a red. Nobody addresses this. No one's done a motor control screen on their kid. They almost always get a red on this one. And they don't use pattern primers. They use cues. And so what we have here is if we want to make a gamer, and the gamer to train that takes these 9 things, like we have people who do like 2 of them. And so the question that I have for you is how many of these are you actually implementing, and you have like a strategic plan to implement with your kids? So you need to be honest with yourself, like how many of these things are you actually doing, and grade yourself. And then once you kind of have a sense of that, here's what I really recommend you do next. So this is something that I did for myself with my son and my daughter, and this is where we are now. So this is today. This is where we're at right now. And then this is what it looks like when at the end of this line, this is once your kid finishes high school. So we'll call high school, I don't know, we'll just call it finish high school, okay? And so this is a time. I don't know how far your kid away. When I started this process, we were about 10 years away. You might be 3 years away. You might be whatever. But we have, different, let's call this is a, let's say we have a kid who's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years away from finishing high school, okay? And so what you want to ask yourself is, what do we actually want to have happen here? And so I want you to like in an ideal world, what do you want to have happen for your hitter? So for me, my answer to this is I wanted my son or daughter, if they loved the game, they had to love it. I wanted them to be in the top. I wanted them to be able to make it to college. So this is a top 7% of kids go to college, okay? I wanted to put them in a place where they could do that. That was my ideal example. I don't know what yours is, and so you might have some other ones. The next one, and where I try to make sure I help people get to, is I want to make sure that everybody makes it to high school varsity, okay? It's like not a very good way to spell varsity, but like being able to play high school varsity, like that'd be like an okay outcome. Like we're not going to go play college, but maybe like I just want them to be able to experience what high school varsity sports is like. Do I want to set them on a path for that? It's like an okay result would be like they love the game, but like they're a JV lifer. Like they're just never going to be good enough to play on high school varsity. That happens to some of our athletes that we work with. And then the other one is like, bad result is like they can they just make it to 12U, right? Like they don't, it's like don't quit 12U. And so what I want to do now, if we draw a green line to the top 7, and let's take our orange line to high school varsity, and we have our JV line, and then we have our we just don't want them to quit line. Like, which one do you want? Okay, and then here's the question. If you got all greens, you're on a pretty good path to make that top 7. If it's like half greens and half oranges, you're on the high school varsity. If you're all reds, like this is where we're at. And so the question is, like, what do you want to have happen here? What, like, if that's line 1 and that's line 2, 3 and 4, what line do you want your kid to be on? And so then the question is, what pieces do you need to start to add into your training so that you can actually jump up some lines? Do you want to go from line 3 to 2? Do you want to go from line 2 to 1? Do you want to go from just 4 to 3? Like, I just want him to like the game, but like stick with it enough. I don't care how much he goes. Either way is fine. But what you do need to understand is, however many years away you are from this, notice how when you're this many years away, like, there's not a big difference between line 1 and line 4. And the longer that you wait, the bigger that difference is. If you come to me and you're a junior in high school and like you're on line 4, we've got a bigger problem than if you come to me as a 9U player and you're on line 4 and you want to get to green. It's easier to do this the quicker, the sooner that we start this process. And so if you're a parent out there who's wanting to upgrade like to another line and you want some help in learning how to implement this kind of approach for your athlete, that is what we do for people. And here's what I want you to do if you would like some help in implementing this and creating a plan. My personal cell number, let's see, where can I put it? I'll put it right here. It's 509 599 9657. So it's right there, 509-599-9657. Just shoot me a text. It's my personal cell phone. It's not an automated one. Just put the comment or the text word help, and I will get back to you, and I will show you how we can help create a plan for your hitter to do this, where we can start to look at your hitter's footage, we can start to assess their movements, we can start to show you how to build all these routines so that you can help your hitter take their game to the next level and help them fulfill their goals for what they have on the kinds of player that they want to become.